Hello everyone, and welcome. Thanks for taking the time today to join Edward Klanowski, Gaco Product Manager, and myself, Jason Loftus, Director of Gaco Flex Coatings.
And today, Jason and I are going to take you through how to choose the right type of coating for your roof. We're going to start by taking a 50,000 foot view at 3 of the major coating chemistries available today in the market, and then delve into some of the details and considerations you want to take into account when choosing the proper chemistry for your given roof. So before we get into the presentation, I would like to say throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please submit those through the Q&A form on the bottom, and we will address as many as possible at the end of this presentation. So with that, let's get into talking about some of the coating chemistries. And we are going to focus on the primary 3 that are used in the market today, being acrylics, silicones, and urethanes. And together, those 3 make up 85% of the US coating market. With that said, there is no perfect coating for every application in the market today, so we are going to talk about some of the benefits as well as some of the limitations of each of these chemistries before we go into the details of where you would use each one. So let's start by talking about the acrylic segment, which is by far the largest segment of the coatings market today, about 50% or so. And several advantages. The first that I want to call out is the fact that they are water-based chemistries, which means they are very easy to clean, very easy to use, very easy to apply. So very user-friendly when put into a roofing application compared to some of the other chemistries that are out in the market. Additionally, they have a great dirt resistance characteristic to them, which is kind of inherent to the chemistry and kind of how it evolves through its life cycle on a roof that we'll talk about in a second, but always has a very nice aesthetic appeal to it throughout the course of its history. And finally, the cost to performance ratio that acrylic offers is really a huge benefit for this product. You know, when you compare it to things like a reskin or a complete re-roof, you know, the performance you get at the price point you get is hard to beat in market today. But like all things, there are limitations. It's not all positive. And one of the biggest to the acrylic side of the fact is that it is water soluble, which means in applications where there's a lot of moisture or ponding water, this is not the right product to use as it is water soluble and will ultimately wash off the roof. The second thing that I will call out, and this ties into not only the dirt resistance but also the water solubility portion of this, is over time the UV impact on this product does cause it to chalk. And when you do get a rain, it does wash off that chalk, but ultimately washes off the very top skin layer of the product. So while it always has a great aesthetic appearance, it's self-cleaning. It literally sheds its top layer over time. So you do lose dry mill thickness over the life of the product, which really just means you need to maintain a proper maintenance schedule on the roof to make sure you always have what you need up there to protect the building. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about silicones.
What we can state is, if you think Gaco Flex Coatings, you probably defer to silicones, right? It's on the forefront of what we're known for. With our Gaco roof products, our S2000, and now our S4200 primerless silicone, okay? So first and foremost, the ponding waterproof, right? So some of the limitations that you discussed in acrylics is an advantage with silicones. The chemistry of silicone gives you the resistance to ponding water. Silicone is waterproof, okay? The second one is the UV stability, right? So it doesn't weather as other chemistries will. It's gonna retain its elasticity. It's not going to lose the DFTs or the dry film thickness that you're gonna see with other technologies out there. And third is the extended application window, right? So talking both seasonality and temperature, right? So when you look at, let's say, acrylics, generally speaking, you can say 50 to 90 degrees. Everybody looks at that lower end of the spectrum, right? Well, silicones, not having any water. They're either solvent-borne or solvent-free. You don't have any freeze-thaw cycle. Therefore, you can apply down to freezing. And on the opposite spectrum, you can apply up to 120 degrees, which will actually take you further than most acrylics or maybe even urethanes, okay? But with those advantages come some limitations. And the first and foremost is the tensile strength or the tear resistance of silicones, okay? Not as high as some of the acrylics or urethanes out there. Also, with the UV stability and lack of degradation of the coating, we don't get the self-cleaning. Okay, so it's not going to stay as white and bright as a urethane or acrylic will. And third, and I would say the most contested that I'd like to talk about, is the like product recoat repair. With coatings, you've seen people put urethanes over acrylics or vice versa. If you're using a silicone, you have to repair or recoat with like product. And yes, that answers the question. You can recoat our silicone with silicone. We have specifications. They're renewable, right? It's a renewable system. You put a 10-year down, we will have a recoat specification where you can boot another 10, 15, or 20 years. So yes, we do stick to ourselves.
Thanks, Jason. So the last coating chemistry I want to talk about, and it's really one of the ones that we have our longest history with, is urethanes. You know, Gaco's urethane business dates back to the 60s, specifically on the decking and waterproofing side of things, but we have a long history with the product and have only recently brought it over to the roofing side of the business with some of the performance attributes that it offers and affords on a roofing application. So, speaking to the advantages specifically, you know, this product is available in both a single and plural component system, which both have their advantages. Obviously on the single component side of things, very easy and fast to apply. There's no mixing. You don't have to worry about pot life once you do mix. But on the plural component side of things, you know, you do have some enhancements in physical properties and adhesion, as well as a proven track record.
Yeah.
Right. You know, the two component systems have been out there the longest by far. But really, you know, focusing on the physical characteristics of the product, one of the main standout features of urethanes is the tensile strength. And there's really no product that compares from a tensile standpoint to the urethanes at this point in time, which lends itself directly to impact resistance, be it hail, debris, or in the case of urethanes, when we're talking about, you know, decking and waterproofing, vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, with the growth of, you know, the use of roofs and rooftop spaces for plazas and high traffic areas. So, you know, on the flip side of the coin, there are limitations, and these performance attributes do come at a cost. And typically, urethane systems are a higher price point than a comparable silicone or acrylic system. Additionally, they typically are multi-step systems as well, not just multiple applications, but multiple components. So within the urethane space, you have both an aromatic and an aliphatic type product. Your aromatic would be a base type product, not UV stable, but a solid foundation, and then you would top coat that with an aliphatic UV stable product to kind of finalize and enhance the system. So a little more complication, a few more coats that need to be applied, but still a very robust system in its entirety. So having talked about those three systems specifically, you know, before we choose the right chemistry for a roof, how do we know if a roof is right for a coating?
Great question, Ed, right? So with coatings being now the second fastest growing segment of commercial roofing applications behind TPO, and the acceptance of coatings over I'd say the last several years, comes the question of, is coatings always an answer? Is it always a solution? And the answer is no, they're not. So you've covered the most common types of chemistries out there. But first and foremost, let's make sure that we're coating a roof that is acceptable. And the first thing we're going to look at is, has the existing roof exceeded its life cycle? Okay, let's not forget that coatings are a maintenance solution, right? They're meant to extend the life of existing roof. When you look at codes such as FM, they're they're listed as a maintenance solution. Okay, so after you've decided, hey, this roof is still within its life cycle, we want to extend the life of it. It is a option to put coatings on this roof. Let's look at the physical damage on the roof, right? Is there or has there been physical damage on this roof that may have led to water intrusion, where now we have wet insulation? And a lot of times what we'll look at and help guide you through the process on is, you know, is there 1,000 squares, and do 250 to 300 of these squares, does it have wet insulation?
Right.
Because at that point, cost comes into play, right?
It's more cost effective and performance driven to replace the
roof, right? So after we've made that decision of it is a option viable for coatings, the first thing that we tend to look at is the roof type. And in its most simplistic form is it steep slope or low slope, okay? If it's steep slope, it's meant to shed water, and it's probably visible, so we're gonna look at acrylics or urethanes, okay? Or if it's a low slope, where it may be prone to ponding water. And now we're gonna look at silicones.
Right. Yeah, so let's get into a little bit more detail on some of the consideration taken into. So let's talk climate, let's talk building type, as well as system requirements from a building owner perspective, and some location and uses. So from a geography standpoint, what do we need to look at?
Climate, right? So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Let's look at history. So where are acrylics prevalent? And they're hot, dry, arid climates. The reasons why, what is the ask there? Why are they successful there? Well, if it's arid, then you have the lack of precipitation, right? So more than likely you're not gonna have ponding water, okay? So acrylic works there. Also, it's hot and dry. And your other two chemistries are moisture cures, right? So again, acrylics, it's a win, okay? On the opposite side of the spectrum, again, you have your tropical climates. And this is where you first started seeing silicone technology take off. One, it's moisture cure, so you have the early rainwater resistance, right? You don't have to worry about wash off, okay? It helps the curing process.
Yeah, especially in those regions that have showers, every day at noon.
Every day, right? You go through some climates where every summer at 2 o'clock it rains, right. So that helps. Urethanes are moisture cured as well. But with all that rain, you have ponding water, okay? So again, ponding water resistance, it's gonna steer you towards that silicone solution. But there's also other considerations to take a look at, and that's weather risks, right? Where do we have severe inclemental weather? Possible hail, okay? Or debris that may impact the roof. You heard Ed talking earlier about some of the advantages of urethanes, and that includes the hail resistance and the physical impact resistance.
Right. So with that said, let's talk a little bit more about the building types. And Jason did an excellent job talking about low slope versus steep slope and some of the chemistries that are better there. From a visible and hidden standpoint, be it from the ground or from an above floor, obviously acrylics having the water shedding capability as well as urethanes in many cases are very good from an aesthetic standpoint. But on the traffic side of things, and this mirrors to the impact resistance we just talked about, whether it's people, equipment, or vehicles, urethanes are really a clear winner when you talk about rooftop traffic and something that's going to be really abused on top of a facility. But the last thing I would mention is from a substrate standpoint, while all of these chemistries can be used on pretty much any existing roof, there are certain preparations that need to be made based on what you're going from and to. So for instance, take for an example, a mod bit roof that you want to coat with silicone. The oil-based nature of mod bit, you want to make sure you trap that oil-based layer into it with a bleed trap primer or something of that nature so it doesn't migrate to the top coat and ultimately cause aesthetic damages to the top coat of the system.
Right. Substrate can help come into play to determine what type of coating you're going to use.
Right. And proper preparation, just like anything. So with that is what are the system requirements? Right. And two things that come to mind is the system service life and warranty requirements, okay? They're tied together. And a lot of that decision making, if not all of it, is gonna come from the building owner, okay? We can help steer them in the right direction, but we're gonna look at certain things such as what is the occupancy time that they're looking at, right? Are they looking for another 10 years in this building, 15 years, 20 years? Also, what are the performance needs that they have? Based again on location, okay, geography, and installation limitations. So your warranty requirements are going to determine your installation limitations, your maintenance considerations, your performance needs. And again, it's all going to be tied to your system service life. If you need a 10-year warranty versus a 20-year warranty, you're going to spend more time on that roof. You're going to put different requirements down based on the warranty, and that can put you outside of your application window if you're in a climate that is prone to inclement weather and you have to put multiple coats on. You're limited. Right. So one other thing to kind of look at coatings in contrast to traditional roofing considerations is the location of the building. Is it in a metropolitan or urban environment? Many of the traditional roofing systems require a substantial amount of staging space to deliver the material, to house it, and even getting it up onto a roof can be troublesome when you look at potentially blocking traffic with a crane or what have you. Whereas a coating, and this is coatings across the chemistry spectrum, can be available in 5-gallon buckets that can be carried up on a freight elevator or in drums, which can be pumped onto a roof.
Right.
So relatively small staging footprint and prone to urban environments. Great option. Mm-hmm. So the last thing I'll touch on is building use, and what's being done inside the building can also drastically impact what you choose to put on top of it. So take, for an example, a food processing facility or a restaurant. You have animal byproducts, animal fats that are ultimately exhaust directly out of the building onto the roof. And these products can degrade certain types of membranes that we have experience with, and even, to some extent, the coatings that are put on top. So in that case, an inert product like a silicone is excellent against guarding against animal fats. Mm-hmm. Similarly, in manufacturing facilities where you have a lot of chemicals, VOCs, whatever, that are exhausted out of that facility, you want to make sure that they are not going to damage the coating or maintenance layer that you have on top of a roof. So once again, your inert silicones or your urethanes are fantastic from a chemical resistance standpoint. And the last thing to mention, it's not always feasible to empty a facility when you're doing maintenance on it. You think retail, you think medical facilities. So you have to be cognizant that, if the building does need to remain occupied during this installation, looking for products that don't have strong odors, that have low VOCs, don't disrupt what's going on inside. So your acrylics that are water-based or your solventless silicones provide an excellent option in those scenarios. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the last thing that, let's touch on real quick is the environmental aspect. We always think, the reflectivity, mm-hmm. the recoatability, but from a sustainability standpoint and a long-term look at what coatings offer, where can we take coatings, not just from a maintenance standpoint, but out into the future?
Great question, Ed. So first and foremost, let's talk about this in two different perspectives, mm-hmm. okay? One as an assembly. So now you're looking at foam and coatings. Yeah. Okay, so foam and coatings is one of the few sustainable roofing options that we have in the industry today. Precisely the foam and then the coating used as a protective top coat. The coating used as a protective top coat with the foam, it gives you a sustainable solution. It also gives you renewable. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we say sustainable, we're talking renewable, right? And when you're putting that protective top coat on, we talked earlier about you can do, recoat, right? You can recoat it. So mm-hmm. if you put the foam down, you apply the top coat, come back in 15 years, do another 15-year spec. Now you have a renewable roof. Okay. The second part of that is coatings in and itself, right? And used as a maintenance option. So I like to think of it as coatings as a third generation solution. Mm-hmm. Okay. You have your initial building with its initial roof. The roof gets towards its life cycle and its ending, and they decide to do a re-roof or a recover, and now you've, in a sense, put a second roof on. When you look at codes, guidance, you're not going to go past that, right? So what is your third option? Well, the environmental impact of not having to tear that roof off, of being able to put on a maintenance coating, and again, 10, 15, 20-year solution, mm-hmm. and then being able to come back and do a renewable system over and over again on that, right? So now you've entered this circular solution of first, second, third generation renewable system. And we know one thing in the US, and that is that construction is one of the highest contributors to landfill waste, right? So if we're doing a foam and coating solution or just a coating solution to extend the existing life of that roof, that's a great savings on environmental impact, right? Which Absolutely. Turns into
cost savings.
Cost savings, right?
I mean, labor savings and not having to reinstall insulation, so on and so forth, as well as not having to pay for that insulation mm-hmm. Every two roofs, basically.
Right. So one thing that we have learned today, hopefully, is that every roof is unique. Every situation is different. The building owner, the contractor, the consultant, the climate, the geography, what type of building it is. We gave you a 50,000 foot view, but to get the street level view, that's our boots on the ground. And what you're looking at now is our nationwide coverage. And we have a national footprint of area managers, distribution managers, regional managers, field tech reps, with the support teams that we have in our offices, with our customer service and people such as yourself, Ed. If you go to gaco.com/representatives, you can type in your zip code and get in touch with your local area manager to find out, to help guide you through this process on the street level of what type of coating is the right type of coating for my roof.
Absolutely.
Thank you for attending today's webinar. If you have additional questions or want to learn more about Gaco, please reach out to your local area manager at gaco.com/representative.